Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We've got a special guest with us today. I hope everybody's doing well. We have Michael from Overland Bound. Michael, welcome to
Yeah.
the channel.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Michael has one of the bigger overlanding YouTube channels on YouTube. I found him a few years ago and reached out to him and asked him if he would talk to us about how he uses his ham radios and whatever kind of communications he has. Well, first of all, Abe, what you got going this week? Anything good?
No, nothing good. I woke up too early today because the dang on daylight savings time changed, and
Oh
I
man,
think that is all a government conspiracy. I haven't figured out which one, but I think it's one of some sort. And then tonight I am going up to the Roadhouse up the road with a couple of the fellers. They got some live music. They play
Roadhouse.
both kinds of music up there, country and western.
I was
And
gonna say
so
rhythm and blues.
yeah, so I'm excited to get up there and have a cold one or two and watch some live music. So that's
Nice.
as far as my plans go.
you're gonna have a cold one,
Have cold one or two. That's right.
Mike. So you know that Abe's into conspiracy theories and Bigfoot. So
Very
a
good.
little
Very
background.
good.
Tia,
In a
what's going
professional
on?
capacity. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know. I mean, today, like Abe said, I got up stupid early this morning. I'm going around like I got 40 minutes until showtime. I got nothing I can do in 40 minutes. And so I'm just like pacing back and forth in the house. It's like daylight savings time is over. Daylight wasting time begins. Welcome to daylight wasting time, folks.
Oh, I know.
I grilled chicken this morning already. I had nothing to do, so I was like,
Yeah, I already ate dinner. I'm ready for bed. Yeah.
they're not on the West Coast. Mike and I just got up. Well, I've been up since 3:30. It said, which is actually it was 4:30, I guess. And so I'm going to ask Michael a few questions. First of all, I'm going to ask him.
You need to
Not
let him
for
introduce himself, Chuck.
Well, I'm going to do that. Michael, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your channel
Good job, Chuck.
and what your
Sure.
things say.
Yeah. Sure. Let me go get some coffee. I'll be right back. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So Overland Bound, we're a community, worldwide community, but heavily concentrated here in the U.S. and in North America. And our community supports each other in adventure travel. And the reason we started it was that we feel like, especially when you get caught up in the daily grind, that spirit of adventure that makes us, kind of tick, can be put on the back burner, and so we create a community that makes sure you're getting out there, you're finding an adventure, and we feel that that really makes healthier, happier people. Actually, a lot of the BS gets stripped away, and you're focused on things that are really important, like relationships and support, and seeing what you can do and that sort of thing. So that's why we exist. I started it because I grew up in Humboldt County, and my dad was a forest ranger, and then my folks the family had a logging company in Mendocino County. So I just grew up outside in the woods. I grew up on the Van Dusen River, and so I just kind of grew up that way. Left it aside professionally for because of my profession for many years, but then after a series of events in my life that made me stop and take stock. I kind of turned back to it. And then when I did, I was like, man, you know what? This is super important. So I started a blog, and then it grew to become, Overland Bound and where we're at today.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Now, Humboldt County, that's Bigfoot territory, right? I mean, I'm sure that you heard a lot of reports.
Every other weekend, we used to have when I was a kid, and we were getting in trouble on the river bar. He'd come and hang out with us around the campfire.
I was going to ask if you had a sighting there.
So there's no conspiracy there. That Bigfoot exists. Either that or that was Marlin, the farmer. But I think they're kind of indistinguishable.
He's related to him anyway.
Yeah, right. Awesome.
Yeah, Northern California, Humboldt County. Grew up in Humboldt County. Ukiah. I mean, the San Francisco Bay Area. If you grew up in Humboldt County, is Southern California, no doubt about it. It's Southern California.
Right.
It's not Central or Northern. It's Southern California.
Yeah, and
That's
they
great.
call us Northern California, but we're actually Central. I mean, when you got a state that long, I
Yeah.
mean, there should be a like
Yeah.
Central area. We do have the Central Valley, I guess they call that. But awesome.
Yeah.
So I knew you did some. I didn't know if it was your family that owned a logging company or what. You'd mentioned that you
Yeah.
had done some logging, and that kind of comes into some stuff we'll talk about on
Okay.
your Land Cruiser later, because I know you've got some parts that you learned from logging that helps you in the off-roading on
Yeah.
on your Land Cruiser.
I mean, I was a choker setter. I mean, that like part of one of the world's most dangerous jobs.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying, I don't know. There's just lots of stories there. Didn't do it for very long. It's kind of a transitional. Uh, because it was a family's logging business. My older brother Todd, who still works up in Ukiah, he managed the company at that time, and I went and I worked for the logging company for a little while. But yeah, and it's funny. That's where I fell into calling my truck a rig, because you referred to everything. I mean, when we were in the woods, everything was rigging, and all the equipment and the gear, and especially the yarders, that we would use to do the logging. Everything was rigging. That's the rig. That's and the trucks. That was the rig. And so it kind of spilled over. And I only mention that because a lot of folks are like, "Why do you call them rigs? They're trucks."
Well, we do.
It's like, well, they're
We do
not.
the same thing with our radios here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Rig.
My rig.
Interesting. It's the thing, right? It's like it's the
Right.
thing.
Everything's
The
a rig.
kit. Yeah.
Awesome. So I know Michael did I think it was a 2-minute or so video on what overlanding is.
Yeah.
That one, you guys have to go watch that one because he probably can't do that twice. It was
Right.
in 2 breaths, right? You only use 2 breaths in
Yeah.
2 minutes or something like that.
Right. 2 breaths in 2 minutes. It is. Yeah. It was something. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I do my intros.
Could you? But go ahead and give a brief over what is overlanding to you. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be different things to different people, right?
Yeah. Before we hit the live button, I was talking about my sometimes contrarian nature. It's not really. I'm not really. There's common wisdom, common definitions, and I go with it if it's true, and I believe it. But if I don't believe it, or it's not true, or it's misinformation, then I don't go along with it. And it's funny because I'm that way with the term overlanding and what it is as well. A lot of times you get these lofty, definitions of overlanding, like, where the journey is the principal goal across vast destinations in multiple countries. And I'm like,
It's
no,
getting deep.
it's like, sometimes the destination is absolutely the goal. Right.
Right.
I mean, like sometimes I want to go and see the Grand Canyon. So the way we look at overlanding is it's vehicle dependent travel, period. And it doesn't matter what you drive. So, that kind of flies in the face of a lot of, preconceived notions of what overlanding is. But we really just keep it that simple because there's so many different ways to experience, the great outdoors. So it's vehicle dependent travel that separates it from camping or backpacking. Because when we say vehicle dependent travel, it means you depend on your vehicle for support. And so that's life support, that's shelter, that's your way of getting from point A to point B. And that's what we mean by vehicle dependent travel. And ham radio comes into that, right? So it's part of your support platform. You are dependent on that vehicle. And that's what separates it. But it doesn't drill down too much into the how, because you can choose how to overland, just like you can choose how you want to boat. Is a speedboat on a lake your thing, or is a big old boat going across the ocean your thing? You can kind of define it. But the way I overland, I have my 80 series built out pretty well. We are often going rock crawling because we hang out in the Sierras. It's just part of the destinations we want to go to.
Yeah.
And so a lot of folks would, Yeah, so a lot of folks would say we're on the more extreme side of overlanding, but certainly there are people that are way more extreme than us. And then that kind of tips over into a sport, which is fine. You're like, if you know you're going to go out there and break stuff, and that's kind of the point, that's a sport.
Right.
It's like, can I conquer that mountain? So overlanding is a little bit more long term. You tend to be going, farther distances. You don't want to break your rig because that's your house. It's your life support. So you're a little bit more careful with your vehicle. Also the gear on it, depending on how long you've been building it up or what you have on it, it might be
and you
painful.
might take that little easier route around because you have another 100 miles to go instead of taking that really, like if you're out for the day, it's different, right? I mean,
yeah, Chuck, that's a really good point. In fact, I was at Overland Expo and somebody had a fully built out rig, and there was a conversation about would it go there.
Right.
And the owner said, yeah, it sure would, but I'm not going to do that with my house.
I need to get back home.
That's a good.
So that's a really good. Yeah.
It's a really good explanation because, like, I've asked people who are like, "Hey, I'm an overlander now," and I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" Because I've camped my whole life, and I'm always just like, to me, I didn't understand the difference. And people would say things like, "Well, it means that you four-wheel to get there, or it means that you drove to your campsite." And I'm like, "Well, that's car camping. That's what we've been doing since I was a kid." But I have a Jeep, and a lot of my friends, they go wheeling or they go rock crawling, or they which is different because those guys don't care if they have to replace an axle when they're out there.
If you tow your rig home, it's not overlanding.
I never ever heard anybody say that dependency piece, and that makes total sense to me. I won't make fun of it anymore. I promise.
That's called a trailer queen, Tio.
No, you can please do. I mean, I'll make fun of it myself.
I had
one. You're not an overlander unless you have an overland badge. You can't
Still
be
gotta
one.
get one.
This makes you an overlander. As soon as you have this, then you're an overlander. No, I mean that's the funny thing. We have these emblems, and people are like, "What does that mean?" It's like, well, we have it because it's like it stands for founding principles, and part of those founding principles is you help one another because when you're doing that kind of travel, you're gonna break stuff. You're gonna, it is gonna inevitably happen, and that's part of the adventure. But it's, you're a little bit more careful. We did. It's been a few years ago now, but we did 17 days down through Baja. We went, to the tip of Cabo San Lucas, and you don't want to be out there in the middle of no place, with a broken axle and no support. You just don't.
Actually,
it's a bad situation to be in.
I was going to bring that up. I couldn't wait till the next series on that whole thing because I've done Baja. We did 1,200 miles down the other side. We went down from San Felipe all the way down to past Bay of LA, and then I forget the other. Yep. We went almost to Cabo San Lucas or whatever it is, whatever the lowest one is there. And that was just awesome. And until you've done it, you just. And when I watched you guys do that, it was like it brought back all the memories and stuff, I had some friends
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I had friends that had places in San Felipe, so it was easy for me.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I mean, you get out there and you're like, oh, I'm in the middle of no place. Like,
do you do that? Do you go out in places like that by yourself though a lot, or is it more of a community thing?
So I actually tell people to go out by themselves. And again, we're getting into some of that common wisdom thing where it's like, don't ever go out by yourself. Absolutely go out by yourself because it's part of the whole reason why we say adventure is necessary is you have to separate yourself from everything so you can get your head on straight. I mean, not taking any position about society, but the society we live in will mess your head up because you start worrying about shit that just isn't important.
Yes, a lot of this stuff is not important
to do, right? We all got nothing better to do. So
we're going to argue for the next hour and a half, and at the end of it, we're going to realize that we just wasted an hour and a half. We haven't nothing.
Exactly. So I think you really do need to get away with your thoughts all by yourself, and you might find out that maybe you don't like your thoughts, and that's a good realization, So
I don't like myself.
I say yes. Yeah, right? I mean, it's like, wait, what am I doing?
I need to be a
Looking-
better person.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yes, but be careful, right? If you go by yourself, you don't want to be forging new territory if you can help it. You want to file a trip plan. You want to make sure people know when you're going to be back. Usually when I go out by myself, it's places that I've been before, because in that example previous, like the trip through Cabo San Lucas, we had two mechanics on our trip, right? I mean, we had support on that trip. So that's always good, is to have redundancy if you're doing something that's a little bit more long term or might be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the buddy system. I don't
Yeah.
overland and I don't go do anything nearly extreme, but like I said, I've always done camping and stuff like that, and even just from not from my car could break down, but just from slip and fall off the ledge kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's important,
Yeah.
but appreciate
Things
that.
happen, right?
Yeah,
Like,
they're called accidents,
Sure,
not on
it sure
purposes,
does.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
When we do the Rubicon, usually it's at least two vehicles, just because of the nature of that trail. That is a place you may break stuff, and I've got some friends that are really good at it, and I really like going with them because I know nothing's going to happen. I mean, if we had a guy break a spring and he just drove it out. I mean, I've watched a few channels where the guys, they break a shock mount off of their Jeep. I've got to go home. It's like, really? I wouldn't.
Chuck always hating on people with Jeeps.
Take the shock out.
No, my wife has a Jeep. My wife has a Jeep.
What does she have?
Grand Cherokee. It's not.
That ain't a Jeep.
She's got a
Actually,
Grand.
they actually do overland stuff pretty well. I mean,
No, it's still not a
it's
Jeep.
way too nice. It's way too nice for me to take. I can't take a $50,000 vehicle out. I got it. My free 4Runner that I have that I take out.
It was my Land Rover.
You had a Land Rover, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a Discovery 1. And
One.
Unfortunately, with the weather here and my schedule here, it was returning to nature faster than I was returning to nature. So I sent it on down the road. I made some money on that transaction.
The Discovery One, is that the European design?
It's well, I would say it's the box on box on box, but yeah, they're all boxes.
Yeah.
I like them. I think they're cool.
They are cool. Actually, I was up at my grandson's soccer game the other day, and some guy had one of the newer ones, and it was like decked out. I was like, wish I had time to go check that out, But I was watching a quick game and then getting home. So Michael, you are a ham. What license do you hold? You said you were like a
The lowest one.
Hey, still licensed. Still licensed.
a tech is a license.
Yeah,
So you're a technician. That's what I figured that, because you got into what got you into ham radio? I mean, just go ahead and tell that.
Yeah. So the one thing about the community, which is great, is that there's collective knowledge about what does the best for our situation. That can be comms or shocks, or tires. And so, starting the community, just from the very beginning, there were a number of members that already had converted to ham as the best platform for communication. And I think if you start looking at the various options that are out there, it's superiority becomes unequivocal. I mean, so it's like, what's the best thing? And right. So we started using ham. Communications are vitally important, and you don't have cell service where we go. And it's a safety issue. On the more challenging trips where we have 4 or 5 vehicles, enough to have a lead and a tail. The tail needs to be able to communicate with the lead, and know that everything in between is doing okay. And when you start going over ridges and you get in various terrains, that comms link needs to be solid. And so ham radio is the solution to do that. And there's always, like I said, it's not like we converted over to ham. It's always been a part of the Overland Bound community, but Overland Bound started growing really fast. And with that, there were a lot of different communications options that kind of came into the community.
Right.
And the issue with that is you meet up with a group, and this is something we do quite frequently. We have software that makes it easy for people to plan a trip and then invite other Overland Bound members. And so you get people showing up at the location of the trailhead, and you have CB, you have GMRS, you have ham, you have text me with my cell phone, you have, I won't say cup and string because that's not quite true, but you have every different, form of communication. And so even to this day, I have a CB, GMRS, ham in my truck, so I can cover all bases. But Overland Bound adopted ham radio as our official solution for trail comms. And depending on the event that you go to, some events will say, you have to have a ham radio and a ham license. If you don't, then sorry, we're not gonna, it's that's it. That's less common, but some people are just like, it's got to be ham radio or nothing. And again, that's because of the safeties, the safety protocol. And if you're doing desert bombing, like, the distances between vehicles can become
huge,
quite,
right?
Oh,
yeah, it can become huge. And there's been cases, I'm not even saying it as if this is an uncommon occurrence, right? Where somebody doesn't do a stop turn. A stop turn is where if you're bombing through the desert, especially in something like Baja, if you have to make a turn, you stop until you see the person behind you, then you turn. Well, sometimes that doesn't happen because people forget or whatever. Talking to the co-pilot, they turn and they keep on bombing, and the person behind them just goes straight, and it's miles and miles and miles right away. So that, for that reason, ham has that reach. It's the clarity is unmatched, and it includes positioning with APRS. So we adopted it, and it made it really much more simple within the community just to know ham is the way we roll, and so eventually you should get your ham license.
So are you using 2 meters or 2 meters and 440, or do you do? I mean, you said APRS, so that's on 2 meters.
Yeah, 2, 3, 6, whatever it takes.
Gotcha. I saw that you had the FTM 400 in one of your videos.
Yeah.
Is that the radio? Do you have other radios in your vehicle in case somebody's like, hey, I'm a CB bro?
Yeah, the radio I use, I haven't even scratched the surface on that thing. So I got it on a recommendation from somebody who's much more knowledgeable about ham radio than myself. And he said, hey, this has the most flexibility. A lot of folks use the Yaesu. I chose to go in the direction I went on a recommendation. I've been super happy with it. I do have some handhelds for monitoring. If somebody, if somebody in the party doesn't have a radio, I'll give them a handheld. They can turn it on. They can hear the chatter. So I do have some other radios with me.
Yeah, the FTM 400 is what I would recommend to somebody in those more extreme use cases because of the positioning, the APRS that it has built into it. They are nice radios.
He's got a Kenwood, but which is no longer made, unfortunately. I think Kenwood's
the 74, the
business.
The D74.
Yeah,
that's a very nice radio.
APRS. Yeah, it is.
The challenge there, without like some kind of amp or crossband repeat or something like that, you're only pushing 5 watts out on that thing, right?
Oh no, he's got the mobile.
That's not okay. I got you.
The one with APRS in it.
The TNC and all.
Michael, do you actually use the APRS on your radio?
I do.
Yeah, that
which is interesting.
Unfortunately, go ahead.
That's interesting because it means that I'm found. I mean, obviously,
right.
And so I get random shout outs when I'm out there on the mountain. Somebody will see me and then they'll reach out to me.
That's awesome.
That's always fun. Yeah.
That's cool.
Great.
Yeah. And then I just did a GMRS stuff, and I know
Uh-huh.
that's a lot of people who are in the community are going to that also, but from what I've seen so far, it does not compare with 2 meter in this area. I'm not saying that's
Hmm.
not better in other areas. At least the repeater that I've got tuned into mine, I never hear anything, which is the opposite on 2 meter in this area. I'm sure you've probably listened to a little bit of the. Have you listened to any of the stuff in our area here? Michael lives fairly close to me, so we can probably hit the same areas.
I would say yes, but not enough to draw any comparison. I
Okay.
have used GMRS, and it's clearly way better than CB,
Right.
much better. But the 2 meter is the best thing I've ever used.
Yeah. I think especially in California, I know people in other states don't have the 2 meter repeaters and stuff that we have, but I mean, if you know the repeaters in the area you're going to, there's a good chance you're going to get out because of all the mountains
Hmm.
we have, and the repeaters are usually up high. My buddy says all the time that he's talked over hills even with 2 meter because of the power that you're actually allowed with it. So it's been pretty good for him. He's done more of it. He's been doing it longer than I have. I've talked 50 miles all the time on Simplex, going down the freeway. I'll hear somebody say something and go back to him. In a flat area.
It's funny. We have a GMRS repeater here that is as active as any 2 meter repeater that you've ever listened to. But when you're out in the woods or you're out in the desert or wherever you are, you're not using repeaters. It's all simplex frequencies, right? And so that's where I think it would be, more advantageous to have a 50-watt 2 meter radio than it
Yeah.
would the it's there are some nice mobile GMRS radios that are coming out. And I have a buddy who's real big into wheeling. Right? He doesn't do overlanding. He just goes out, takes his Jeep out and bashes it up and then gets it fixed. And he bought a pretty high end GMRS radio, and he already had a ham radio in there. And he was getting ham shamed. These guys were like, "Why didn't you just mod your ham radio so it can talk on GMRS?" And you spent another $300,
Yeah.
and which is illegal to do that. And but everybody's giving him a hard time. So he asked me. He goes, what is the accepted approach in the ham community around that? And I told him it's no matter what you do in ham radio, somebody's going to give you a hard time. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's the same.
No
in
matter what you
overlanding.
do in any community.
Right? Somebody's
Right,
going to
exactly. Where's the white wire
You
go?
should.
Right?
You should.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. So it's like if you're happy with the choice you made, you did the right thing. That's
Well,
that's all I
he
can
did
say.
it. He did it. He wanted to do it legally. So
Yeah.
I mean,
So
don't give him
he
grief for that.
he doesn't have much space, and he has a Jeep as well, like I mentioned, and it's tight fitting in a Jeep. There isn't a whole lot of space for extra stuff in there, but
Yeah.
so if you can
Mike-
consolidate, it's awesome. But he did it legal. He did it the right way.
Mike's got a limousine really for off roading. I mean, compared to a Jeep or my little
Yeah,
my little
it's
4Runner's tight inside.
Yeah, it's a heavy. Mine's a heavy beast. It's interesting though. It is certainly larger than the 4Runner, but the 80 series compared to some is also not
Yeah.
that large. But I mean, you're right. Compared to a Jeep or a smaller platform, it's nice.
I've actually got my eye on one here local. That's if it ever goes up for sale, it may find its way to my house.
What are you looking for?
Yeah, it's a Series 80 like Michael has. It's probably the one of the most reliable and capable. The Series 80 still had a solid axle on the front, and I don't feel like buying something new and putting a solid axle on it like I did with my 4Runner. It's just I don't want to do that now.
We are looking at picking up a 4Runner, and I got to tell you, man, right now is not the time to buy cars. Like
No. It ain't the time to sell cars either.
I went looking, and I was like, man, I just can't do that without. I'd cry. It just seems like it's. But the tough thing is that would you wait? Do you wait till summer? Do you wait till next fall? But you have no idea what's going to happen. It could even be a worse scenario.
Right.
So I just gotta think about that one a little bit. My wife's going to drive it primarily, and she's like, well, what color do you want to get? And I'm like, I want to get yellow. I want to get something that's like popping. She's like, I'm not going to drive that. I'm like, what about orange or red? She's like, I'm thinking like midnight blue.
Yeah.
Like, no.
So, Michael, we'll get back to your logging. Tell the folks what you've done to keep branches off of. I mean, he totally.
Oh yeah.
In Australia. Actually, we had a question also, Michael. Would you ever consider going to Australia and doing the outback? And
Yeah,
I'm
I've
sure
been,
that's a
so
yes.
yeah, that's a yes. I've been to Australia a number of times. I was fortunate in my last job before doing Overland Bound full time. I was actually sent to Australia once a quarter. There are many Overland Bound members in Australia. So I would rent a 4-wheel drive and they would take me to various places.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
I really enjoy Australia, although I haven't had the opportunity to really explore because they were pretty quick trips, 2 weeks with the work mixed in. Um,
Right.
but the country is great. I love it. It's different than it is here. So the answer is I have done it to some degree. I do enjoy it. I would love to go back. I've got some good friends there. I would love to go back and see them. And I'd like to take a little bit more long-term trip through the outback would be fantastic. But
Yeah.
just being in the environment, you learn a lot. The distances between cities with nothing in between is more than it is here in some ways. Here there's debate about whether you should have a refrigerator in your Overland rig. And there it's like, what are you talking about? Of course, what's going to keep your beer cold? Like what?
That's
Like
right.
of course you need a refrigerator. But at the same time, there's a lot of ingenuity there, solving problems without running to the store, building it yourself, doing a lot of the work yourself, creating and building storage solutions and things of that nature. But there is I would say a higher awareness for long-term or long distance, isolated trips where you're away from everything, and just a bit of preparation that goes into those trips. Here you have to try in the U.S. You can do it. You absolutely can do it, but you have to try to be 6 hours away from no place. So I think there's just a little
Right.
bit more awareness there, and a lot of lessons to be learned from, our friends over in Australia. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah. You guys, if you guys should, if you're interested in this at all, you should check out Michael's channel too, because he's got he's got a friend that helps him build stuff, and he's got one of the coolest,
Yeah.
way nicer than my drawer system I have in mine. Mine was all free, Michael, so it was all scrap wood off the side of my
Yeah.
house. But I'm like, I can't throw this piece away because it's got, out of 8 feet, it's got 6 feet. It's good,
That's worth gold right now, man.
Oh well, yeah, and wood's gotten expensive. But Mike, tell a little bit the process. You strung us out there for quite a while on that build, but I understand
did.
it did happen during COVID, and
Yeah.
that made it. But tell the people. Well, actually, you want to ask the question first, there, Tio?
Yeah, Mike's got a question for off-roading. Do you need GMRS, FRS, and CB in the rig for interoperability? Seems here in Oregon, CB still rules, but I see GMS coming on strong.
Yeah. Well, you guys probably have an opinion about that too. I mean, we're
Yes.
kind of, as the default. Yeah. As the default, we're holding to ham as our recommended solution in the community, within the Overland community. But yeah, I still have CB, GMRS, and in my rig.
I do too.
Yeah.
I've kept CB. The guys I wheel with, all they use is CB. They don't know how to use them. It's like I'll call them, and they can't. We can't hear you, Chuck. I'm like, yeah, because you guys turned your squelch up so far that you can't hear anything past 5 feet. They don't understand that part of it. I'm like, these guys should be able to. I mean, they're like blowing my speaker out, because we're only 15, 20, 30 feet apart or more, a couple hundred feet. But yeah, Mike, tell about your the process you guys went through with the guy's name,
Parnell.
Parnell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Parnell.
he that guy does
Yeah.
some pretty awesome work. You guys, you
Oh,
guys,
yeah.
both of you guys did awesome job. I'll post a link to that, to his final build there, I think, guys. So
Sure.
go ahead and tell about that a little bit.
Yeah. So there's a common, piece of kit in overland vehicles called a drawer system. I've been building my rig since 2010, very slowly but surely. And I said, finally, I was like, okay, I'm going to build a drawer system. And I did a video about it, and I started sketching things out. And one of the great things about the community is that we all support one another. And so a member, Parnell, called me up and he said, I'm going to help you. And I had a little spidey sense that was like, this guy knows what he's doing. Okay.
Exactly.
And boy, did he. He has one of those magical combinations at his shop, which is very hard to achieve, and that is woodworking and woodworking and metalwork all in one.
Nice.
And he can basically fabricate it all, whatever you can imagine. And part of what he does for a living is prototyping, rapid prototyping with different design ideas. So we spent quite a bit of time iterating on the platform, but it ended up being, the perfect solution for me. And just to give a quick description of it, in the 80 series, I wanted to retain the middle row. And what that meant, but I also I wanted a drawer, a refrigerator, retain the middle row, and be able to sleep in the rig. And so with those requirements, the design needed to be really elegant. And now the setup that I have allows you to very quickly, fold down the middle row seats, pull out the platform, put it in place, and you're done. And it has a full length drawer. It doesn't rattle. It houses my inverter. It's got a nice electrical box junction on the back. It has a Dometic CD30 refrigerator, and it's just very, it's very very compact. It's just perfect. And yeah, it took a while, to do that series. But the results are pretty efficient, I think.
You guys have to check it out. Michael and Parnell built it together, and they just did an awesome job on the whole thing. And that'll actually go ahead.
No, I'll give Parnell, all the credit. Yes, I was there and I helped, and I told him what I wanted and, in terms of the requirements, but he's a fantastic fabricator, designer, and he did a great job. Yeah.
And you're talking about your refrigerator. Do you use coolers as well, or is that?
Yeah, sure.
You got to have ice.
Yeah.
I would think so for your beer, right?
It's funny, for the beer. So it's funny. I do. So I'm kind of like a demo platform, and what I mean by that is I'll use gear and break it, so that I can, come up with, so that I can see what gear actually works and recommend it to folks. And I'll try different things, and I'll refer back to some of our earlier trips, long-term trips. I would travel without a cooler and without any refrigeration. And part of the reason I did that was because it started to become common knowledge. Oh, you can't travel without a refrigerator. And I was like, you absolutely can. You don't need one.
Right.
You can travel without a refrigerator. And so we did a few trips that were long-term. That trip in Baja, we had no refrigeration whatsoever. So you don't need one, but you can use anything. So if you want to use a cooler, great. Coolers work great. Or a refrigerator. Thing about the refrigerator is there's a cascading effect, a number of requirements that you then need if you go with a refrigerator. A dual battery system, solar, that all starts to come into play. And you're like, dang, those refrigerators are expensive. They're like at least $300. Well, then add a $300 battery, add a $280 solar panel, add a $150 charge controller, and all of a sudden you're like, dang, that's an expensive refrigerator.
Yeah.
So
do you keep the battery isolated? Like you keep the battery isolated? Yeah, so I talk to a lot of people about that, and they think that I'm crazy. My neighbor, we put a refrigerator in his rig, and he doesn't do any overlanding or even wheeling. It was just to keep ice cream in there so he could eat ice cream when he was
Yeah,
out and
yeah,
about. But
totally.
have
Yeah.
you? And you mentioned earlier your inverter. Have you noticed any interference on any of your radio systems with all the electronics in the rig?
Not yet. I haven't yet. Although, on the last trip I had a I'll just go through this quickly because there's no way that anybody's going to be able to tell me how these gremlins appeared in my system. My stereo and my ham radio, the Yamaha, are completely separate. They are completely 100% separate. There is no shared wire or anything. And when my friend was calling out on the radio, my radio would turn off, which was great. Which was great because every time he went
You
to
could hear
talk,
him,
I
right?
could hear him, no problem.
Oh,
It
nice.
was like a modern day electronic system, but there's no way that it was. I mean, they're completely isolated systems. So something was going on where something was going on that caused a very strange benefit, and I don't know
I had a
what it
radio
was.
here that when I would key up, my TV would turn off, and
Yeah.
I fixed that by getting a new TV. Chuck, you want to take a swing? He's probably got RFI coming in there, right? I mean, it's probably
Yeah.
overloading.
Well, I don't know from his buddy's rig. I don't know. It's
That's
like
what
from the
happened.
other
I mean,
from the other rig.
and I would,
So
yeah, I would explain it to him. I would say, hey,
Probably- you
this is
probably
what's
need-
happening.
somebody, well, I can't get it close enough. Sorry. Toroids maybe. Michael actually built his system around a interesting refrigerator because his is a drawer, which I've come to really like that because it left him space. Like
Yeah.
mine sits on top of my stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
doing an extra battery box, like one of those solar generator things. I'm building my own because I'm
Very
cheap
cool.
and I can do it, and that's
Cool.
what I'm going to use for mine. I ran mine for when I was down in Bodie, that area. I think it ran for 5 days off the battery with no problems, and it was still running when I got home. And I charged it for like an hour with solar, but it really didn't do that much because I'm kind of getting into the solar part of it also. But yeah, his system's built around that drawer, which is really cool. I had already purchased what I have, which I like, and I've used it for what's nice is mine's moves from vehicle to vehicle. So I don't know if you can you do that with yours?
No.
No,
He said it didn't rattle, Chuck. That means it's mounted in there tight.
Yeah, well, mine doesn't rattle
Yeah.
either, but other than the beer bottles, that's a nice tone though, you know. Actually, I try not to take bottles camping. We have another question for you, Michael. What would you recommend as a budget starter rig, and also a daily and driver and grocery getter?
Yeah. Well, it all depends on the requirements, because that's where it starts. Going back to one of our sayings, it doesn't matter what you drive. It does matter where you drive it and what you're going to ask it
Right.
to do. So depending on what your needs are, I would say before you start, you're going to eventually gravitate towards a vehicle because it's going to be the thing that you like. To get to that point, my advice is to really think what you're going to be doing with that vehicle mostly, and then build it for a little bit beyond that, because you're always going to you're not building your rig out for what you're going to handle. You're building it out for the things that you don't expect or the situations you're going to find yourself in, which is why you see these fully built out vehicles. The only thing I would say in terms of recommendation is, if you think you're going to be spending time off-road, start right away just looking at four-wheel drive vehicles. And that might sound obvious, but it's not necessarily, right? I mean, you can overland in a non-four-wheel drive vehicle, and there are people in our communities that do. But if you think you're going to be off-road, as a bare minimum, I would say to just look at four-wheel drive vehicles. And then older Tacomas are really nice, right? They also hold their value, so it's hard to find a deal. But you can employ just about any platform. Do research on that particular build. When that's exactly what I did when I excuse me, when I selected the 80. I knew my requirements. I have 2 kids. I knew their friends were going to be in the vehicle at times. Then I wanted certain capabilities like factory lockers. I knew I wanted 4-wheel drive. I wanted a solid axle for me personally. And that really distilled it down to a Disco 2 or a Land Cruiser 80. And then I did research on Edmunds about true cost of ownership. At the time, this might surprise folks, but at the time, not true now, at the time, the true cost of ownership of the 80 series was $500 in repair, not maintenance, repair a year, $500. The Disco 2 at the time was $5,000, which is an order of magnitude. And now this was factory repair, right? So given, we're not talking about what it would cost you if you're doing it in your own garage, but if you just took the true cost of ownership of both vehicles, I was like, you know what? The Disco is breaking more frequently. The 80 series was a way for me to go. So that's how I would approach it. There's no right answer for what a good budget platform is, especially now when buying a used car is not very friendly these days. But the 4Runner, I'll mention a couple specific things. The 4Runner is a really good, a really good platform. 80 series, I can't say it's a good budget platform because unless you're lucky, they're kind of asking a premium for the 80 series right now. But those vehicles are decent vehicles. But I'd start from what you're going to ask it to use.
Yeah.
So
Or what you're going to ask it to do.
Like I'm a huge fan of Jeeps. Like I'm on my 3rd Wrangler in my lifetime. You guys don't really use or recommend them because of the space issue in them. Is what I would assume, right? Since you're so dependent on the vehicle, or
No, Ape.
Yeah, but they're-
you said the magic word. You're on your 3rd one.
well, I had the first one. I was 19.
I'm
I'm
kidding.
49
I'm-
now.
Yeah.
It should still last.
Right.
I'm kidding. No,
No,
actually,
so there's a lot of Jeeps in our community, a lot of them, and especially with the Gladiator, it's sort of opened up even more possibilities, in terms of that wheelbase and what you can do with it. So Jeeps are great. Are great. I mean, they're very capable, and if you start skewing towards, this is why I say, what are you going to do with the vehicle? If you start skewing towards rock crawling in the Sierras, you're going to want a shorter wheelbase, and Jeeps are venerable trail vehicles, and honestly, a Jeep in a lot of ways are built for the trail, and so just right off the factory line, if you want to go from the assembly line to a trail, a Jeep is a really good solution because that's what they're built for. So I mean, it's that. So they're really good.
Yeah, and in the U.S. right now, the only thing offered with a solid axle is a Jeep. You had the Gladiator and you have the Wrangler, which is arguably probably the most robust for off-roading as compared to. There's nothing wrong with a lot of guys now are like somebody said they have a Tacoma. Tacomas are super popular now. So are 4Runners. Nissans, a lot of the Nissans are starting to become popular also, and there's nothing wrong with those. And dependability's there. Jeeps, that was the only thing for me on Jeeps. I think they've gotten a lot better in the last few years about being more dependable, like the newer Jeeps and stuff. But they come from the factory. I mean, you can buy a Rubicon, and that thing's ready to go pretty much.
They're ready to go. They're great.
For pretty good, yeah. Nothing wrong with Jeep. I still, in fact, if I went new right now, it probably would be like a 4-door Wrangler.
Mine's a 4-door.
If you were going to go new right now, one surprising option is the Ford Ranger with a Tremor package. No, the Ford Ranger with the Tremor package. The cost for a new vehicle is reasonable, and they're very capable. Now, the Ford Bronco, yes, as an obvious, as an obvious contender, right? Like just
Right.
the
You're saying
specs
for
of that
value,
vehicle.
though.
Yeah, but for value, if you want to be, cost conscious and you're in the market for a new vehicle, then the Ford Ranger with the Tremor package is really impressive. Just look at the stats, in terms of
Yeah, I checked
breakover
that
angle,
out.
departure. It's great, and you can load that thing up over 300 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, on that little EcoBoost engine, it's like, wait, what? Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's a very
Oh, I know.
capable vehicle. Yeah.
My
Eco
wife's
boost.
my wife's Jeep with a V6 in it. I can't believe how much power. I actually, when she brought
Yeah.
that thing home, I took it for a test drive, and I had to go outside and get a flashlight because it was night and make sure it didn't have a Hemi in it. I was like, this thing's got to have a V8 in it. It's got way too much power.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So the new engines are just crazy. But the bad thing is the electronics, though.
Roger was asking questions about
Sometimes.
APRS, and he was saying that he likes to play in an area where there's not a lot of APRS, and he said if he was asking if it was worth a shot or not. It, like everything else, it depends on what you're going to use your APRS for. If it's so your old lady at the house can track you, it's not going to do you much good unless you're getting on a digi repeater or a gateway, an iGateway that's going
is
to
it
post.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So you need a gateway to get your signal on the internet so people can look you up on APRSFI. But if you're just with your bros and they're in different cars and you're beaconing out and they're just trying to find you, it's fine. It's fine for that.
proximity.
One of the
Yep.
things I would suggest is that you might be in a place that doesn't have RF. When Tom was on, he was talking about the cell phone booster that he had that allowed him to get internet connectivity further than he could have radio connectivity. So that might also be something that you're looking for there.
Unfortunately, that's changing with the 5G stuff. I don't know if Michael, do you use any kind of phone boosters at all?
So
mine
I've
quit
used
working.
the WeBoost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use the WeBoost, and they do work. It is such a difficult thing to measure the effectiveness. But my best case scenario has been zero signal to LTE was the largest boost I've ever seen with the unit that I was using. They do work. It's hard to measure the effectiveness. If you have no cell reception, then a WeBoost or a cell booster is not going to do anything.
Right.
But if you have weak signal or there's signal out there that you're not able to get on your phone, then it will pick that up and allow you to have some signal. The painful part is that they're so darn expensive.
Yeah, they are.
You want to be able to talk to your grandma across the United States when you pay that bill because they're expensive. But they do marginally help. You get a couple of bars or you'll get signal where otherwise you wouldn't get signal. So
That's what I've seen. If you
they
got
do
one
help.
bar, you get three, right? I've seen like 2 bar
Yeah.
increase usually,
Yep.
which doesn't mean you're still going to get out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And
I used to have the DeLorme InReach, and while it's not APRS, it would allow you to drop locations on things like Twitter or there's another social media platform, but you could also text or email from it using the Iridium network. The device itself is like $199, $200, something like that, and it was like $15 a month to keep a certain number of messages per month. But again, it's not APRS.
I think,
Yeah.
Michael, you've gone to something different now, right? It's a little newer setup.
Well,
I had that written down
we tried out
someplace.
the
Zolo.
we've tried out it's called a Zolio. Do I have one here? I do. Can I get it? I can. So this little unit, it's good, but you can't. The benefit of the DeLorme InReach Explorer is that people can track you on a map. And there's two-way text comms. And this is two-way text comms, which is great. It satisfies, most needs, but they don't yet have the map tracking for folks that are back at home, which the DeLorme InReach has.
Oh, okay.
So what I tell people is if you're going off grid, the DeLorme InReach is, one of the best solutions out there. It's tried and true. Some kind of SATCOMs is not optional if you're going to be off grid for extended periods of time. And the reason for that is because the DeLorme InReach, anything that's based on the Iridium satellite network, there are no gray areas on the planet. If you can see the sky, you can get a signal out. And the important thing is two-way comms. So there are less expensive options out there that will send out a beacon, but you don't know if anybody got it. It'll say, hey, here's where I'm at, but you don't know if they're coming.
Right.
And so from a safety perspective, I just tell people some kind of SATCOMs, if you're doing this stuff on a regular basis, is not an option. You need to get something. And they're spendy. It's like the DeLorme InReach Explorer is, like $400 and some odd dollars. It's not inexpensive, but it's a safety feature. I have a trauma kit in my truck that's $500. It's like, dang, that's spendy. But
you need it though.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
You
need it.
One-stop shop trauma kit. It's like you have the first aid gear is expensive if you get the right stuff, and you need to have it.
Do you have any trauma training that you recommend folks take? Like, I mean, there's Red Cross, like level 1 first aid and stop the bleed and stuff like that.
A simple. So I'll tell you what we tell. Our community. We have a medical advisor who's a trauma surgeon and has all kinds of initials after his name. And what he tells folks is do something. Don't be afraid. And it's like you go. There's a lot. Well, this day and age, I'm afraid to get sued. F off. Get out of your rig and go do something. Go and try and help because it's going to be better than nothing.
There's also
who cares about So there's and this is, by the way, and I understand this is highly contentious. You're going to get people that are saying if you're not trained, you have no business, and I understand that. But
you got a phone, you can call for help.
Yeah, in the wild. So if you're in an urban area, response times are like 3 to 7 minutes. The infrastructure is really good, and so there's something with CPR where people are like, you no longer have to do mouth to mouth, just do chest compressions.
Yep.
And that's because response times are so good. And so you call 911, someone's going to be there within 3 to 7 minutes. Boom, let the professionals do their job. But in our situation where you're off grid, you are not doing brain surgery out there. And, what you're trying to do is stabilize the patient so they'll make it back. And that's it. And so it's about airway breathing and circulation. And that's what you want to handle. If it's like the air has to go in and out, the blood has to go round and round, and the red sticky stuff can't be squirting out. That's it. Anything beyond that person's in a dire situation. We go a little bit farther than that. We like the trauma kit that we have. It does have chest seals in it. There are more advanced trauma gear and expendables in the kit. But what we basically tell people is do something, get some preliminary training, understand, how to do an assessment. And we have videos on this with Chris, trauma surgeon, that tell you what things you should know. But, simple things like if you walk up to somebody who's been thrown from their vehicle and you say, hey, Bob, how you feeling right now? And they're like, I'm not feeling too good. Guess what? They're conscious. They're breathing. You've done a preliminary assessment. Look for the squirty stuff, right? And if that happens, put your finger on it and apply pressure and then wrap them up. So it's pretty basic stuff. Get some basic training so that you understand you have the requisite level of confidence yourself personally, and you can always go beyond that. But get yourself to a situation where you know how to make an assessment and you can put on a tourniquet and you can do some basic stuff to stabilize somebody so you can get them home.
Yeah. I used to coach soccer. Girls soccer in high school, and one of our goalie got smashed into one time, and the ref just kind of kick the ball, blah blah blah, and I'm watching her, and all of a sudden she's getting scored on and things. I'm like, something's not right. So I stopped the game. I asked the guy, hey, I need to talk to my goalie, and she had a concussion, and nobody, like the people on the field, didn't check it out. So I told all my kids from now on, somebody gets hurt like that, you ask them a few simple questions, and if they can't answer, what you're asking them, you make sure that I find out, because, and that's what I used to be a firefighter, and I felt really bad because we didn't get her out of the game as fast as we should have. But like you're saying, I mean, just learn how to stop bleeding. I mean, that's pressure and raise or whatever you have to do. It's just like you say, in the backcountry, we tried to be 5 minutes or better here in the city, and we were pretty good at that most of the time. But we had outlying areas that was 10 minutes or something.
Did you get the points taken off the board?
No, they wouldn't do that for us.
I'd have been like, ref, me and you are going to have a talking to.
We were playing out in Michael's area, and soccer is really, really good out there.
Well, people get surprised, but soccer is actually a really dangerous sport for concussions, because so many people hit the ball with their head. When I was a kid, concussions didn't exist. Like you never, ever heard of anybody getting a concussion. I'm sure people got them all the time, but it was just never something that was on the radar. Like, we didn't wear helmets when we did stuff. You could tell now, but back then, it was not riding a bicycle. We would never wear a helmet.
Right. Yeah. So for some basic first aid, if nothing else, if you're going to go out, and a lot of things that will happen out like that is cuts and stuff. I mean, you're working on your rig and something, or burns. Yeah.
I hate to do this. I actually have to run. I had some other plans today. It was great meeting you, Mike. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks for being on the show, and take care, everybody. And I'll catch the rest on Team Replay. See you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
So we did talk about your. You do run a dual battery system now. You were hesitant on that for a while, I think, right? Or just it was always in the background.
Always in the background. I'll put it that. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And you did like you said, you've got it isolated now too. For my fridge, so, I'm running just a battery box that I can actually take my fridge and the box out and run it, and also run. So I'm going to have. Well, I don't have it built yet, but it's going to have solar for it and everything. So. Yeah.
Yeah, they are isolated. It's a very simple setup. So I did a setup that's not including the battery. It's like $70 in parts, and then I'm gonna go, here in the near future, I'm gonna go full boat crazy with a battery management system. So I'm kind of doing two extremes, but part of that is because some folks are gonna want to build it themselves. They want to know what's required.
Right.
And then other people will throw money at it and say, I want the best. And, that's another way to go. There are reasons why you need something that's more advanced. But the simple setup is just a solenoid that turns on when you turn on your ignition. The solenoid disconnects when your ignition is off. So the batteries are isolated. You can run your accessories. It'll drain that house battery, but it won't touch your starting battery. And then as soon as you turn your ignition on, then the solenoid closes. Your system is closed. There are some requirements for that. You want to have the same charging profile if you're just going to pair up the batteries. So having the same kind of battery, like mine are the exact same North Star AGM batteries. They have the exact same charging profile. So when the truck is charging, they both charge at the same rate. But it's a very simple setup that I have right now.
Yeah, that is one reason. Mine's lithium in the battery box, and then I need a new battery in the Forerunner. When I tried to run my fridge off the Forerunner battery, it lasted about half an hour, and so I need something a little more robust.
So a charge controller starts coming into play when you have different types of batteries and different charging profiles, right? Because the charge controller will say, oh, that's a lithium battery. I'm going to charge it at this rate. We're going to do this.
Right.
That's a, lead acid. We're going to do this. So that's when you're more, higher end charge controllers start coming into play.
Right. So you one of your last videos or one of your last projects was the kitchen for the back of your Land Cruiser, and that all came about. The way it's made was because of your wife. I don't know if we would talk about that, but I mean she has a hard time lifting stuff, and Parnell again steps in and you designed it, I think, and then Parnell figured out how to make it work, right?
Yeah, exactly. So with everything that we do, Corey has rheumatoid arthritis, and that means that things have to be, you know, really easy for her to use. So she'll go from, you know, a good day to I can't walk and everything in between. So
Right.
all of the gear that we use, you know, the default is will Corey be able to use this gear if she's out there by herself? And so with the kitchen, you know, we try and be rapid deploy and rapid, you know, we want to be in service quickly. So we try and keep our deploy and pack time at 5 minutes. And so for the kitchen, it is a folding, we call it the transformer kitchen. Parnell designed it, and it opens in 15 to 20 seconds. It just, you know, boom, boom, boom. And if you see it, it's like, well, that looks like a chef's kitchen. It's stained, you know, it's solid aluminum, you know, it's really great. And then it has gas springs, gas shocks to,
Right.
you know, handle the weight to make that easier.
Yeah, I actually posted a couple links to I think the last video on that whole thing. It's really cool, guys. If you want to check out something, it's, like he says, the transformer. That's basically what it is. The only thing I worried about was it getting dirty, but I guess you're gonna put like a cover over it, right?
Yeah, it'll have. It's funny when we do a video. There's one concern that the community has, that is the like when I did the relay box. It's where does the white wire go? With the transformer kitchen, it's what about dirt and dust? And so we'll have a dust cover. Yeah, eat it.
It's okay.
It's seasoning.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Add a little nutmeg, you'll be fine.
Yes. Yeah. So that, and then I was showing my wife. She's like, "That's really cool," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, but they're gonna get like a cover to go over it." So that would pretty much take care of most of it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It
So it
sets,
has a little lip. Yeah.
If you guys don't know, it sets on the back of his Land Cruiser, so it's outside. That's why I was saying that. It's pretty cool. And it goes from like a box. It's what 2 by 2, and it ends up being 3 feet long or something, or 4 feet long. It's really cool.
And you know, just when you see it, the perception is, because it is long, is, oh, you need a leg on the end. But when you see it in person, it becomes clear that you really do not. It is, so the hinges are weighted at 900 pounds.
Yeah. So
you can put 900 pounds on the end of the kitchen, you know, before the hinges will fail. It's the kitchen was a solid piece of billet aluminum before it was machined. So it's very strong.
So that leads me to the question, Teflon or cast iron?
Oh, good question. I'll tell you, we do a lot of Teflon. We have the lightweight, who makes it? I don't know if it's Snow Peak.
The titanium stuff?
But the reason we use it is because it's low heat cooking.
Right.
So with very little heat, and again, speed for me is important. You turn on the flame, you put the low heat kitchen gear on it, and you're cooking. I mean, there's no time to heat up at all, and then it cools off right away as well. So that's why we do tend to go with the lighter gear, but I've got nothing against cast iron. You know, it's just a different deal.
Yeah, I love the cast iron home, but I don't take it camping partly because of the weight. In fact, the pans I bought, I'm probably gonna change out because they're stainless steel and they're a little on the heavy side also. But they pack inside of each other. That was the cool thing about it, because space is is like gold, right? You need space.
That's right.
To keep stuff. I was actually able to take all of my boxes that I had laying in the back of my 4Runner and fit all that stuff under my my drawer system. So that was nice. But then I watched one of your videos and I ended up buying one of those Gazelle tents, and that thing doesn't fit anywhere. It's awesome tent.
If you get it's a great tent. The T3 will fit in most vehicles sideways, but not in Jeep.
I bought the T4 because I wanted something that I could stand up in, and then I got it. It's like, oh my God, this thing's huge. But it will fit in my 4Runner long ways.
Yeah.
Barely.
Yeah, that's well. If I have the T4, it either goes on the rack or it goes, on the inside. Most of the time, I think I have a T4 up there now that's up there pretty much the entire
And
always.
that's what's behind him in the orange thing there. I think is one of those tents,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
up there. They're pretty awesome tents. They're about 60 seconds. Mike did
Yeah.
a crazy video on taking it down and putting it up, and I think less than 90 seconds anyhow. Yeah.
Yeah,
sold me on that
they're
part.
great. They're not small, right? They're not
No.
small, but they're great.
Yeah.
They're fast. And
Yeah.
again, I break gear and I'm impatient with gear, and I want things to be quick. And so when we tried that out a number of years ago, I was like, "Holy cow! I can't break this thing. It's doing well and it's fast." So,
I had one of those round circle ones, and it was pretty cool. But I have to like scratch my head to figure out how to put that thing, get it back in the circle
yeah,
when you fold it.
and I
back
broke
up.
mine.
Did you?
Yeah, I had one of those, and the first time I was like trying to fold it, and it was like crack. Like, oh,
Oh, I was
was the
always
wrong-
worried about breaking it, trying to put it back together. That's
Yeah.
and it's you got to find some like 12-year-old kid to do it for you. Here, put this
Right.
back, would you? It's like cell phones for me. Well, that's awesome. So some of the things you've done the Rubicon or not?
I've done pieces of the Rubicon.
Pieces.
But I haven't run the whole thing. I would not say I've done a legitimate Rubicon trip. I went up there. We were doing some preliminary testing with BF Goodrich on the KM3 tires before they were released, and we did a stretch of the Rubicon as part of the testing regime. So I would not call that a real just go out there and enjoy the Rubicon type trip, and I would like to do that.
Yeah, my first trip after I built my my Forerunner was all the way across with a friend that I'd met
Very cool.
on this site. The Rubicon's become easier over the years. We used to do it on 4x4 quads. We pulled trailers. We pulled into Spider Lake one time, and these guys we had literally my buddy carried the kitchen sink. He couldn't figure out how to carry. I go, well, why don't you just put a false bottom in your trailer? He goes, oh, that's a good idea. So the next thing I know, we're out there, and he's pulling out this. I mean, it's like 6 foot long by the time he gets it out, And we have a 3-man rubber raft with a little 1-horse motor. And we're out there catching fish, and these Jeeper guys come
Very
up.
cool.
They were in Jeeps. I don't want to say it that way, but how'd you guys get that boat up here? And I told him in our quads. And he goes, yes. I'm like, you see anything else here? we're all by ourselves, He goes, oh yeah, I hadn't thought like that, But yeah. So that was, and then I've watched people with like totally built out rigs, and I went with guys that grew up on the Rubicon after that, and I watched guys like the first little section's called the Caretaker. That's where you come out of Loon Lake there, and they're pulling the winch on the first section, and my wife's like, she's shaking her head. She goes, "Are you kidding me?" And these guys are in built vehicles. I mean,
Yeah.
it's because they weren't used to it. And I actually learned on my quad, because you had to my kids would take their little 80 quads and 90 quads out there and go across the Rubicon. We had to lift it in some places. They just weren't big enough,
Right.
But
right.
I enjoyed your series on the Mojave Road and Death Valley and all that stuff. That's on my bucket list to get it here. Hopefully in this. Well, actually, it's coming up, because a lot of those areas you want to go this time of year, so it's not too hot, right?
Yeah, the Mojave Road is a great 3-day trip. If you have longer,
Yeah.
you'll be able to see more of it. There's some great destinations out there that are not, just right along the Mojave Road. If you go a little bit further off the beaten path, so more times better. But if you only got 2 days, you can do it.
Yeah, T.O.'s going to come out
Yeah.
and go with me. He
Oh,
wants
for
to do
sure,
that. That and motorcycle riding.
Yep.
Cool.
Go out and do some
Very cool.
touring of the Sierras with the motorcycle. That's always fun.
Yeah, it'll be nice.
Yeah.
Now's the time to do it too, when it's freezing out here.
Yeah, he lives
Right.
he lives in Wisconsin. It's already starting to snow. We've had snow, but not where we live. The other one is Alabama Hills. I think
Yeah.
I just saw some stuff on that. It's like, oh, that place looks so. It looks a lot like Moab or or Arizona or something. It's right here. What, 5 hours from us, 4 hours, something like that.
Yeah, the whole stretch of 395 is gorgeous. You know, the Eastern
Yeah.
Sierras are gorgeous, and Alabama Hills is a great spot to go. There's plenty of harder trails in the area, but anybody can go and camp out in Alabama Hills. You know, even a two-wheel drive vehicle, but you can
Oh
find
yeah.
challenge if you want to find it.
And just for people that don't live in California, Alabama Hills, you've all seen it because it's in like almost every Western
Yeah, yeah,
that you've ever watched. It's
yeah.
that I guess the weather there was always good for. I mean, you have to like my Forerunner right now doesn't have AC, so I was looking at it in the summertime. I'm like, I don't know if I want to drive there right now because it was like
Right,
in the
right.
90s, you know.
Yeah.
And it's
No,
not much. It's
it's
not much fun.
yeah. If you watch the old movie Tremors, it's
Yeah.
all shot in Alabama Hills. Iron Man, the whole first the introductory scene where Jericho missiles, um,
Yeah.
all of that shot. It's shot in a lot of movies. You'll start recognizing it.
Yeah. So what is your favorite trail or your favorite place to
Uh,
go to?
well, I have a soft spot out Highway 4, Eastern Sierras. If you drive out, Lake Alpine is a great area,
Hmm.
and Slick Rock Trail around Lake Alpine. So Slick Rock goes from Lake Alpine to Utica Reservoir, and it's just a great area. Alpine lakes, and plenty of places to go. So lots of Forest Service roads, and in the same area is Corral Hollow Trail, which is one of the first trails I ever went on in this area. So I have a soft spot for Corral Hollow Trail. And I just really love the terrain out there. It's great. Lots of great memories. And of course, that makes your favorite destination, right? Is the memories
Right.
that you accumulate. So I just really enjoy, that area a lot.
Yeah,
Out
the
Highway
Alpine
4.
Lodge.
Yeah.
Alpine Lodge is one of our destinations. A lot of times when we do the Harley rides, we come from Reno up into
Cool.
there, and that's a crazy little road down the other side of Highway 4 into
Yep.
Nevada, and it's like my buddy's dad got ran off the road there, and we were pretty upset. I just as soon as we get to that last little section, it's like crawl. But if you ever want a good Bloody Mary, that place,
Yep.
it's like a meal. Have you
They
ever
do
eaten
it
there?
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, we've
So
been
that's-
there a number of times. Yeah.
That's the same Alpine Lake. Then I guess I've never done that trail. That's one of the ones I haven't done. So
Yes, your Forerunner would be well suited for it. My 80 series, I fell down that trail. I had no business being on that trail. They recently did a bypass,
Yeah.
and the bypass is much harder. It is actually a hard trail. The reason I went was because, of course, I have some great memories and some nice camping spots that I like along Slick Rock, and I had heard that it was hard. And so I wanted to verify that it was actually hard, and it's actually hard. It's
Yeah.
it's
Now you know.
no longer now I know. It's no longer a medium rated trail. It's a hard trail now.
yeah, and you run like
But it's great.
35-inch tires, right? You have 35s. on yours?
35s with 2.5-inch lift. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
That's-
no, again, I fell down the trail.
Yeah, I watched
It's
that
for-
video. It was a
Yeah,
pretty tough
it's
little
for-
section there.
It's for more built rigs. That's the thing, is it's like, never think that your vehicle can go anywhere. I mean, you learn that fairly early on, but you might think, oh yeah, I'm never getting stuck. And then you get yourself on a trail and you're like, I have
Oh,
no
yeah.
business being on this
If you're
trail.
not getting stuck, you're not trying hard enough.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. I have all the winch on mine. I pulled it for my buddies. My buddy, we went snow running, and his Jeep just kept sinking. It was kind of on that soft section. I had these big old
Yeah.
balloon IROCs on that thing, just floats, And I was kind of wimpy when I tried to pull him out, and I tried to pull him out slow, and that was a mistake. So then we were both
Yeah.
stuck. So I had to
Gotcha.
pull the winch for that one. But I was glad I had it then.
Yeah.
And then my buddy's Forerunner, he got it stuck on a rock where all four wheels were off the ground. So, but
Well, that's I mean, even with all the traction, I mean, if all four wheels are off the ground, you're not going anywhere. You're
no,
stuck. Yeah.
But the worst thing is getting a four-wheel drive stuck, because usually it's all four wheels, and then it's a lot more digging. I've done that before too.
You're really stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, where You really don't want to go on the trail where the guy before you that made the ruts had bigger tires than you, because when you fall off into the ruts, then you're stuck.
Right.
I've done that.
Yep.
I've done
And,
that.
and then you got people looking at your car like, oh, I wonder if he's leaving it overnight, you know?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't.
Right. Those are nice lights.
Winch.
Yeah, everything's gone the next morning. That was in my old Chevy pickup, man. That thing.
It's
was-
easier to
used
haul
wheel
out,
that
though.
thing crazy.
Less stuff.
Yeah, a lot less to recover later, right? So, what's the any big, huge things ever happen where you've had to use your ham radios? We're just about to the end here, so
Let's see. So I would say not a huge emergency situation yet. Thankfully.
No, because he had the
but
radios.
there's been-
no emergency that hams can't overcome.
that's right.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. But to that point, though, they're so critical in comms that I think you avoid a lot of mistakes, like navigation mistakes. Losing people on the trail. If you are bombing through the desert, you can just communicate with ham radio, and I think it avoids a lot of mishaps that might happen because you are in constant communication. So, it's been really good for us and for the community. Thankfully, we haven't had a super emergency, critical situation, probably because of communications. Yeah.
That's a good thing. I know up on the Rubicon a couple of years ago, somebody had rolled one of their vehicles up there, and I think a gal got trapped under it or something. And I know the hams were pretty good about at least getting word out, because there's a repeater system on the Rubicon. So
Right.
they were getting, and that was kind of my first. I actually wasn't there. I actually was hearing it though. I was at a friend's cabin up in the middle of nowhere, and I was seeing what I could get with my handheld, and I was actually hearing some traffic from that at the time. But the first time, my first big stuff with ham radio was a guy. We're staying at Spider Lake, and he's like, my buddy's friend's wife for some reason needed to talk to her mom about something. I don't know what it was, but he's like, that was back when they used the phone systems, and he goes, "Oh, I can dial that up for you. Hang on," And that was it was like, oh, this ham radio stuff's kind of cool,
Oh, you mean the auto patch?
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's Michael may not even know about that. I don't know how long you've been doing ham, but you used to be able to patch into the phone system with your ham radios.
Cool.
And I've never done it, but it was
Yes,
pretty
you
cool.
have.
Now-
You did it yesterday.
If
Right.
if I reach out to the Overland Bound community and you ask the same question, you would get a list, right?
Right.
So for me personally, it's critical in terms of communication, but I am sure within the community that there's been plenty of cases where ham radios made the difference.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All righty. So we're about wrapping it up, Michael. I really appreciate you
Cool.
coming in, and because you didn't know me from anything.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Totally. Anytime. Absolutely happy to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. It was great having you on, and hopefully our viewers got something from all this. And if you just stick around, we'll end this today, and we'll talk to you before you get out of here. So.
Yeah, sure. Everybody at home, be sure to subscribe to this channel, to Chuck's channel, to Michael's channel, to my channel. We're all over the place. We're all doing all kinds of really interesting content, and we will see you in the next one.
Yeah. Later, everybody. Thanks for being here.